For as long as anyone could remember, humanity had looked at the stars with wonder. Children would stare up at the night sky and imagine what it would be like to walk on distant worlds, to touch the rings of Saturn, or to see the glowing spiral arms of a faraway galaxy. Grown-ups too felt the pull of the unknown. It was in humanity's nature to explore, to question, and to never accept limits. From the earliest days of flight to the first rockets that left Earth's atmosphere, humans had always pushed forward, even when others said it was impossible. And now, in the middle of the 22nd century, the impossible had taken a new shape, faster than light travel. For decades, scientists had tried and failed to create a ship that could cross the vast distances of space in the blink of an eye. The Galactic Council, a coalition of thousands of advanced civilizations, had long claimed that such travel was not only impossible, but dangerous. They warned that exceeding certain quantum limits could tear apart space-time itself, creating ripples that might destroy entire star systems. For most alien civilizations, the idea of faster-than-light travel beyond their carefully measured boundaries was terrifying. They had built empires and traditions on these limits. Humanity, of course, heard the warnings, but true to its nature, it saw them as challenges rather than prohibitions. Hidden deep in Earth's orbit, in a sprawling network of research stations and laboratories, teams of scientists, engineers, and visionaries worked tirelessly. These were people who had grown up reading about the stars, dreaming of distant worlds and refusing to accept the idea that humans were limited to a single solar system. They were not motivated by power or conquest. They were motivated by curiosity, by the desire to see what lay beyond the next horizon, and by the stubborn refusal to let fear dictate the future. They worked in secrecy, not because they were hiding from the law, but because the eyes of the galaxy were watching. The Council had already declared that if humanity attempted to develop a faster-than-light drive beyond their safe threshold, the consequences would be catastrophic. The Council's agents monitored Earth's space programs, skeptical of humanity's ability to succeed, and wary of what would happen if they did. Despite the pressure, the scientists did not waver. Every day they experimented with ideas that had been dismissed as fantasy. They tested new materials that could withstand unimaginable energies, developed computer systems capable of processing calculations in fractions of a second, and explored theories of space and time that most civilizations considered too dangerous to touch. It was exhausting, dangerous work. There were accidents, explosions, and failures that sometimes set the project back months or even years. But each failure only strengthened their resolve. Humanity had a long history of rising after setbacks, of learning from mistakes, and of turning failure into progress. As the years went by, the team began to notice something remarkable. Patterns emerged in their calculations that no one had predicted. Tiny fluctuations in energy resonance, once thought insignificant, were amplifying in ways that could make travel beyond light speed possible. It was as if the universe itself was offering a key, hidden in the very fabric of space and time, waiting for someone persistent enough to find it. For the first time, hope began to outweigh doubt. The breakthrough came late one night after months of simulations and trials. A scientist adjusted the energy resonance in a way no one had dared before. The experiment began, and the tiny test craft vanished from one end of the lab and reappeared a few kilometers away in an instant. Everyone in the room froze. No one spoke at first. It was one of those rare moments where you realize that something fundamental has changed. Humanity had taken the first step toward faster-than-light travel beyond any known limits. It was no longer theoretical. It was real. News of the experiment could not remain secret for long. Sensors in orbit detected the energy signature, and whispers of humanity's success spread through the galaxy. The Council was not pleased. They summoned human representatives demanding an explanation. They called the breakthrough reckless and dangerous, insisting that humanity abandon the project immediately. The Council warned of consequences that would ripple through space and tear apart entire star systems. But humanity, true to its stubborn and bold nature, refused to comply. To them, this was not a weapon nor a threat. It was freedom. For the first time in history, humanity could explore the stars on its own terms. Even as the Council deliberated, the scientists continued their work. They refined the drive, built more robust test ships, and prepared for the day when the technology could be scaled for real exploration. They faced skepticism not only from aliens but from some within humanity itself. Could they truly control such power? Could the laws of the universe withstand what they were attempting? Yet every step forward, every successful test brought a renewed sense of purpose. It was not arrogance. It was a quiet confidence, born from decades of perseverance, learning, and sheer determination. Humanity's success did not come from technology alone. It came from its people, those who refused to accept limits, who questioned the impossible, and who believed in a future that others could not even imagine. It came from the countless nights spent studying, experimenting, and dreaming. It came from the courage to keep going even when failure seemed inevitable, and the hope that what they were building could change everything. And so, as Earth continued to orbit its sun, the stars above no longer seemed distant and untouchable. Humanity had unlocked the first key to the cosmos, and with it, the potential to rewrite the rules of the galaxy. The journey had only just begun, but the first step had been taken. In the silence of space stations, laboratories, and hidden docks, a new chapter was quietly being written. A chapter where humans no longer had to ask permission from the galaxy to reach for the stars. They had proven something extraordinary, that no matter how small or seemingly insignificant a species might be, determination, curiosity, and courage could challenge even the oldest, most powerful forces in the universe. And as the team gazed at the night sky from their stations, looking at the distant stars that had once seemed so unreachable, a sense of possibility filled them. They were standing at the edge of something monumental. The universe was no longer just a place to observe. It was a place to explore, and humanity, against all odds, was ready. The first part of the story ended not with fanfare or explosions, but with quiet determination. The drive had been built. The experiment had succeeded. The Council had noticed, and humanity for the first time had shown the galaxy that it would not be controlled, intimidated, or dismissed. A new era was beginning, and the stars were waiting. After the first successful experiment, the team of scientists and engineers felt a mix of awe, excitement, and cautious hope. They had proven that faster-than-light travel was possible. But proving it in a tiny test craft was only the beginning. Now they faced the real challenge, scaling the technology so that a full-sized ship, capable of carrying humans safely, could jump across the stars. Every calculation mattered. Every tiny misstep could mean failure or worse. But humanity had never been one to give up when faced with difficulty. The project now had a name, Project Lightfall. It became the focus of a select group of people who were willing to dedicate every waking hour to achieving the impossible. Engineers worked day and night, building larger prototypes and testing new energy systems. Scientists pored over the mathematics of folded space, tweaking formulas, checking results, and testing simulations. Even the smallest improvement could make the difference between a safe jump and catastrophic collapse. The entire process demanded patience, precision, and creativity. At first, progress was slow. Every test had its failures. Engines overheated, calculations failed, and components broke under pressures no material had ever endured. Each failure was a lesson, though. The team learned to work together more efficiently, to share knowledge, and to solve problems through collaboration. Unlike many alien civilizations which preferred strict hierarchy and rigid rules, humanity relied on creativity and trust. When a new idea came from a young engineer who had only been part of the project for a year, it was taken seriously. When a veteran scientist suggested a small adjustment in the resonance matrix, it could save weeks of work. There was no ego, no pride in being the smartest person in the room, only a shared desire to reach the stars. Slowly, progress became visible. Microjumps grew longer. What had first been a craft disappearing for a few kilometers began to travel entire solar systems in a fraction of a second. The energy required was immense, but the team discovered ways to channel it efficiently. It was delicate work, balancing power and stability, but it worked. Each successful test strengthened the belief that humanity was no longer bound by the old rules of physics, or at least, the rules as understood by the Galactic Council. The breakthrough that changed everything came unexpectedly. One night during a late experiment, a researcher decided to try a small adjustment in the energy resonance frequency, something so minor that most scientists would have ignored it. The prototype ship vanished from one side of the lab and reappeared not just across the room or the orbiting station, but across the planet. Sensors confirmed it. The ship had jumped nearly 50,000 kilometers in a blink. The result stunned everyone. Not only had the jump succeeded, but the ship had arrived intact with no damage to the surrounding space. It was as if the universe itself had accepted humanity's challenge. The excitement was electric. This was not just progress. It was proof that the technology could work on a scale large enough to carry humans safely. For the first time, the dream of exploring distant stars without waiting centuries was within reach. The team celebrated quietly, aware that this moment could change the galaxy forever. But along with celebration came caution. They knew that the Galactic Council would be watching. The Council had never tolerated breakthroughs that threatened its control over interstellar travel. As predicted, the Council responded quickly. A message arrived on Earth, carried by advanced communication systems that could reach even the outer solar systems in minutes. The message was firm, even menacing. Humanity had been warned. The development of a drive that exceeded their safe quantum limits was a violation of galactic law. The Council demanded the immediate cessation of all tests and threatened consequences for continued experimentation. They painted a vivid picture of disaster, entire star systems collapsing, the fabric of reality tearing apart, civilizations wiped out. It was meant to intimidate, and for a moment it unsettled some members of the team. But humanity had a different perspective. Unlike the Council, which prioritized order, safety, and control above all else, humans valued discovery, courage, and the right to explore. To them, the Council's warnings were not commands, they were challenges. The team knew the risks, but they had also studied them carefully. Their tests were controlled, their calculations precise, and their understanding of energy resonance deeper than anyone else had ever achieved. They were not reckless, they were determined, and above all, they refused to hand over something that could change the course of their species. The Council sent envoys, sophisticated alien beings who had ruled interstellar policy for millennia. They arrived in massive, gleaming ships that seemed to absorb light, designed to intimidate and impress. The humans met them with a mixture of caution and resolve. The envoys spoke in precise, measured tones, expressing concern for the safety of the galaxy and demanding that humanity surrender Project Lightfall immediately. They emphasized that humans were still primitive and reckless compared to the ancient civilizations of the Council. The humans listened, but they did not flinch. They explained that their work was carefully monitored, that every jump had been calculated, and that the technology was not a threat. It was a tool for exploration. They argued that humanity had the right to progress, to discover, and to chart its own destiny. The debate lasted hours. The Council was frustrated, unused to negotiating with a species that refused to bow. In the end, humanity did not give in. They made it clear that the project would continue no matter the warnings. Behind the diplomatic discussions, the real work continued. The team focused on the next stage, scaling the drive for a full-size ship that could carry humans safely. They built larger prototypes, installed life support systems, and tested the integrity of the hull under extreme energy fields. Each step was carefully recorded, analyzed, and improved upon. They faced setbacks, but each failure was met with renewed determination. They knew that if they succeeded, they would have not only changed humanity's destiny, but the destiny of the galaxy itself. The scientists and engineers worked in shifts, day and night, for weeks. Meals were often cold or skipped. Sleep was brief, but there was a sense of unity and purpose that carried them through exhaustion. Unlike many civilizations that relied solely on hierarchy or tradition, humanity relied on collaboration, empathy, and ingenuity. Ideas could come from anyone, no matter their rank. Questions were encouraged, debates were welcomed, and solutions were celebrated. It was this approach, more than any technology, that allowed them to achieve what the Council had long considered impossible. Eventually, the team reached a point where the drive could carry a human safely across long distances. Simulations confirmed stability, and small manned tests were scheduled. The first volunteer crew was chosen not because they were the strongest or the most experienced, but because they were brave, smart, and willing to face the unknown. They understood the risks, but they also understood the opportunity to become the first humans to travel faster than light, to step into a future no one else had dared imagine. The preparation for the first manned jump was intense. Every system was checked multiple times. Emergency protocols were developed. Communications were established, even though for the first few seconds of a jump the crew would be completely isolated from the outside world. The scientists watched anxiously as the countdown began. Every second felt like an eternity, but they trusted in their calculations, their design, and their collective experience. When the jump finally happened, the world held its breath. The craft vanished in a brilliant flash, then reappeared exactly where it was intended, thousands of kilometers away. The crew was unharmed. Sensors confirmed that space around them was stable. The impossible had become reality. Humanity had not only built a faster-than-light drive, but they had demonstrated that it could safely carry humans. The reaction was electric. Cheers erupted in the control rooms. People hugged, cried, and laughed. For the first time, humanity had taken its place among the stars, not as a dependent species, but as a true explorer. But the Council did not celebrate. They realized that humanity had crossed a line that could not be undone. Their authority, their control over interstellar travel, had been challenged. The whispers of fear spread through the Council's chambers. They had always considered humanity reckless, but now they understood that this small, seemingly insignificant species had done what no one else had dared. They had changed the rules. They had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. And on Earth, as the first crew returned safely, the team of scientists and engineers looked at one another with quiet satisfaction. They had done what many had said was impossible. They had broken the boundaries of what was considered safe. They had not done it for fame, for glory, or for conquest. They had done it for humanity, for the right to explore, to learn, and to grow. And in that moment, the stars above did not seem distant anymore. They seemed reachable. They seemed alive with possibility. Humanity had opened a door that no one could close. After humanity's first successful faster-than-light jump, the galaxy began to take notice. The Galactic Council, a coalition of thousands of advanced civilizations that had ruled interstellar space for millennia, was alarmed. They had always prided themselves on controlling technology and knowledge, maintaining strict rules for travel and experimentation. They believed the laws of the universe were theirs to enforce and no species could challenge them. Humanity had done exactly that. They had proven that a species once considered primitive could break the boundaries the Council had carefully built. The Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of powerful civilizations gathered, each expressing concern in their own way. Some were furious, seeing humanity as reckless and dangerous. Others were fearful, realizing that the drive could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. In their long history, no one had dared openly defy the Council and succeed. Humanity had done both. The energy signatures from the jumps had already spread across the galaxy, visible to sensors and systems that no one had thought could detect such a leap. The whispers of a small blue planet challenging the old order were becoming a chorus. Meanwhile, back on Earth and in the orbiting research stations, humans continued their work. They were not seeking conflict or domination. For them, this was about exploration and freedom. They wanted to understand the universe, to see worlds never touched by anyone else, and to ensure that humanity could survive and thrive beyond its own solar system. Still, they knew the Council would try to interfere. They had already sent warnings and envoys demanding that Project Lightfall be stopped. But humans were not inclined to surrender, and they had no intention of doing so. The Council's envoys arrived, massive ships that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Their designs were alien and imposing, designed to inspire fear and submission. The envoys themselves were intimidating, creatures of intelligence and experience that had lived for centuries. They came to Earth, to the orbiting stations, to confront the humans directly. They demanded that the project cease immediately, claiming that faster-than-light travel beyond their safe limits would destroy not only humanity but the galaxy itself. Their tone was stern, commanding, and filled with centuries of authority. Humans listened carefully. They respected the experience and knowledge of these beings, but they did not fear them. In calm, measured words, they explained the safeguards, the careful calculations, and the tests that had already proven the drive safe. They emphasized that their goal was not conquest, but discovery. For hours, the conversation continued. The Council tried to intimidate, to threaten, to assert control. Humanity replied with logic, determination, and honesty. The contrast was striking. While the Council relied on authority and fear, Humanity relied on curiosity, courage, and the refusal to be intimidated. This refusal shocked many in the Council. No other species had ever dared stand their ground in such a way. Most would have yielded under pressure, surrendered knowledge, and abandoned their ambitions. Humanity did not. Their determination was quiet but undeniable, and it sent a clear message. This species would not be controlled. Even as the envoy spoke of laws and consequences, the humans calmly continued to explain their vision of exploration and the right to progress. While the diplomatic negotiations were ongoing, the scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to prepare for larger jumps. The goal was no longer just testing the technology. It was readying it for humans to travel safely across light years of space. Every system was strengthened. Life support systems were optimized. Hulls were reinforced. Energy flows were balanced with precision never before seen. Simulations ran continuously, checking for errors, stress points, and anomalies. The entire process was exhausting, but there was a sense of shared purpose that kept everyone going. The first crewed jump beyond a solar system was planned meticulously. The chosen humans were brave, intelligent, and capable of handling the unknown. They understood the risks, but they were also aware of the opportunity. This would be the moment humanity claimed its place among the stars, not as a dependent species, but as explorers in their own right. For weeks, the team prepared. Every system, every calculation, every contingency plan was reviewed and tested. The entire world, and the galaxy, was watching, even if they did not realize it yet. When the day of the first interstellar jump arrived, there was tension unlike anything humanity had felt before. The craft was sleek and advanced, with every system fine-tuned to perfection. As the crew entered the vessel, scientists and engineers monitored every detail. The countdown began. Everyone held their breath. When the jump was executed, the craft vanished in a flash of light. Seconds later, it appeared exactly where it was intended, thousands of kilometers away in perfect condition. The crew emerged unharmed. Humanity had crossed the boundary of light itself. The reaction was immediate. Across Earth and in orbiting stations, cheers erupted. People hugged, laughed, and cried. Humanity had not only achieved what the Council had deemed impossible, but they had done so safely and with precision. The message sent across the galaxy was clear. Humans were no longer a species to be ignored. They had proven their capability, their intelligence, and their courage. The Council, meanwhile, was shaken. They had anticipated resistance, perhaps even failure, but not success. They had believed that warnings and authority would be enough to prevent humanity from progressing. They had been wrong. In the days and weeks that followed, humanity continued its work. They conducted more jumps, extended distances, and refined the technology further. Every success was documented and shared among the team, building confidence and expertise. The Council continued to demand cessation, but their words now carried less weight. Some of their members began to fear that humanity could not only challenge authority, but eventually surpass it. The once monolithic control of the Council was now uncertain. The success of Project Lightfall was more than just a technological achievement. It was a cultural and psychological shift. Humanity had always been ambitious, but now ambition had taken a form that no other species had seen. It was not about domination, control, or war. It was about the right to explore, to innovate, and to exist on their own terms. Humans had taken a bold step into the unknown, not because they were reckless, but because they believed that the future belonged to those willing to reach for it. At the same time, the Council began to fracture. Some species admired the courage of humanity, seeing in them a spark that had been missing for centuries. Others saw them as a threat, something dangerous and unpredictable that could unravel the careful order of interstellar politics. Secret discussions began among Council members. They debated strategies, alliances, and the possibility of taking action against Earth. But for every voice calling for suppression, another argued for observation and adaptation. Humanity's actions had forced even the oldest and most powerful civilizations to reconsider their assumptions about the universe. On Earth, the mood was different. There was excitement, yes, but also focus. The scientists knew that each jump carried risks and that mistakes could be fatal. They continued to refine calculations, improve the drives, and train new crews. They shared knowledge openly within their teams, trusting each other completely. Collaboration, rather than hierarchy, became the foundation of success. Every small improvement mattered. Every insight, no matter how minor it seemed, could mean the difference between a safe journey and disaster. Humanity had proven one important truth: that curiosity, determination, and courage could challenge even the most entrenched powers in the galaxy. They had shown that knowledge, carefully applied, could overcome fear and authority, and they had done it not by aggression, but by persistence, ingenuity, and a refusal to be limited by what others considered impossible. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Project Lightfall became more than a project. It became a symbol. It represented humanity's willingness to step into the unknown, to take risks for the sake of discovery, and to insist on a future of freedom and exploration. Every jump into the stars, every successful test, every crewed mission was a statement. Humanity would not be contained, ignored, or underestimated. And even as the Council debated, argued, and worried, humanity continued its work. The drive was no longer a secret. Its existence had been confirmed by sensors, signals, and the undeniable reality of human achievement. The galaxy had been shaken, and the old order had been challenged. The stage was set for a future that no one could predict. But one thing was certain: humanity had taken the first steps into a larger universe, and nothing would ever be the same again. For the humans involved, the work was exhausting, demanding, and sometimes terrifying. Yet every challenge, every failure, and every success strengthened their resolve. They were not seeking glory. They were seeking understanding, knowledge, and the freedom to explore. And as they prepared for the next jumps, the next tests, and the next discoveries, one thought was clear in every mind: humanity had done the impossible. They had reached beyond the stars, and the galaxy would never forget it. The day of the first full-scale test arrived. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for years. The craft, named the Starship Horizon, was the largest and most advanced vessel ever built by humans. It wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of what humanity had achieved through perseverance, intelligence, and courage. Every inch of the Horizon had been tested, reinforced, and calculated. Life support systems, energy channels, navigation, and the faster-than-light drive itself were all meticulously aligned to ensure success. As the crew boarded the ship, a sense of anticipation filled the control rooms across Earth and the orbiting stations. Engineers and scientists watched screens filled with data, checking for even the smallest anomalies. Outside, the Council had stationed monitoring fleets, massive ships that could detect any unusual activity across light years. They were not expecting what was about to happen. For centuries, the Council had maintained control through fear, authority, and technological superiority. But humanity was about to show them something they had never seen: a species capable of surpassing even their most powerful limitations. The countdown began. Every second was measured, every calculation cross-checked. The crew inside the Horizon felt the weight of history pressing down on them. They were not only traveling faster than light for the first time at this scale, but they were also carrying the hopes of an entire species. The eyes of the galaxy were on them, whether anyone realized it or not. Then, with a precise alignment of energy and timing, the jump was initiated. For an instant, the Horizon disappeared from the sensors. It vanished completely. The energy readings, however, were unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The signature was massive, spreading across multiple systems simultaneously. The Horizon reappeared exactly where it had been calculated to arrive, thousands of kilometers away, intact and stable. The first jump was a complete success. Humans had done what the Council had said was impossible. They had crossed boundaries without tearing space apart, without causing catastrophic damage, and without error. The reaction across human stations and Earth was electric. Scientists cheered. Engineers hugged one another. Even those who had been skeptical could not deny what they had seen. The Horizon had jumped safely and flawlessly. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel on a scale that would allow exploration, transport, and eventually, colonization. But the impact of this jump was not limited to Earth. The Council, monitoring everything in real time, was blindsided. For the first time in history, the Council's sensors were overwhelmed. Their fleets, stationed across hundreds of light years, recorded energy readings that no system could interpret. Some sensors failed entirely. Ancient observation posts went dark, unable to process what had occurred. It was as if reality itself had shifted for a moment, and the Council's authority, built over millennia, had been challenged in an instant. They had spent centuries controlling travel, trade and communication across the galaxy, and suddenly a single species from a small, unremarkable planet had rewritten the rules. Panic spread quietly among the Council members. Some feared that the jump had broken the very fabric of space, as they had always warned. Others realized that their fear was not of destruction, but of being outpaced by humans. For generations, the Council had relied on its knowledge and power to maintain order. It had never faced a species capable of learning, adapting, and innovating so quickly. Humanity had done the unimaginable. It had shattered the illusion of the Council's invincibility. While the Council debated and feared, humanity prepared for the next phase. Engineers analyzed the data from the first jump, refining the drive further. Life support systems were adjusted for longer durations. New crews were trained for even greater distances. Every jump would now serve a dual purpose: exploration and proof. Humanity was showing the galaxy not only that faster-than-light travel was possible, but that it could be done safely, efficiently, and repeatedly. The Council attempted to respond with authority. Their fleets moved toward human-controlled space, intending to intimidate and assert control. However, the speed and efficiency of humanity's jumps made interception impossible. The Horizon and subsequent ships could appear anywhere, at any distance, faster than the Council could react. For the first time, humans were not just exploring, they were untouchable, free to move across the stars without restriction. News of the jumps spread like wildfire. Alien civilizations, previously quiet and cautious, now whispered about humanity in awe and fear. Some species, long oppressed or restricted by the Council's authority, began to see possibilities they had never imagined. Others worried about what humans might do next. For the first time in galactic history, a species that had once been considered insignificant was now seen as a force capable of reshaping the balance of power. Back on Earth, the team of scientists and engineers remained focused. They did not celebrate recklessly, even though they had every reason to. Each jump was still risky and every calculation mattered. But there was a quiet confidence in their work. They had proven that the impossible was achievable. They had shown that fear and authority could be challenged, and that courage, determination, and intellect could overcome centuries of doubt. Humanity was no longer a passive observer of the stars. They were participants, explorers, and innovators. The impact of the first full-scale jump extended beyond technology. It was a psychological shift for both humans and aliens. Humans realized their potential in ways that could not be reversed. They understood that limits existed only until someone had the courage to challenge them. They had glimpsed a future where humanity could roam freely among the stars, unrestricted by fear or control. Meanwhile, the Council faced the terrifying reality that centuries of authority could crumble in an instant. They had been challenged not through war but through innovation and determination. Within weeks, humans conducted more jumps, each one demonstrating mastery over the drive. They traveled to distant planets, mapped new star systems, and recorded data that no civilization had ever collected. Every jump reinforced the same truth. Humanity had not only survived the challenge but had exceeded all expectations. The Council's claims of danger had been proven false. The humans were safe, precise, and capable. As this reality settled across the galaxy, the Council's authority began to fracture. Some species, impressed by human ingenuity, quietly sided with Earth. They saw in humanity a new hope for freedom, exploration, and opportunity. Others feared humanity, uncertain how to respond to a species that had shattered the old rules. Secret meetings and debates were held, but no consensus could be reached. Humanity had introduced an unknown variable into the galaxy, one that could not be contained or controlled. Back on Earth, the work continued with a renewed sense of purpose. The engineers and scientists knew that the drive was more than a machine. It was a statement. It represented the power of determination, collaboration, and courage. It showed that even a species that had once been considered insignificant could rise to challenge centuries of authority and fear. Every test, every calculation, and every jump was a proof not just of technology but of humanity itself. And so, as the Horizon and other ships continued to move through the stars, humanity's reputation grew. They were no longer seen as limited or primitive. They were innovators, explorers, and pioneers. They had demonstrated that boundaries were meant to be challenged, that fear could be overcome, and that courage could reshape the galaxy itself. For the Council, the lesson was stark and unavoidable. The old ways of control and authority had been shattered not by war but by brilliance. They could no longer claim the moral high ground. They could no longer dictate what a species could or could not achieve. Humanity had rewritten the rules of interstellar travel. They had challenged the galaxy and emerged victorious, not through violence but through ingenuity, perseverance, and determination. In the quiet moments, the scientists and engineers reflected on what had happened. They had faced danger, doubt, and disbelief. They had worked tirelessly, risking failure and criticism. And now, humanity had done something extraordinary. They had proven that the impossible could be achieved. The stars were no longer distant points of light. They were destinations waiting to be explored. And in that moment, a sense of possibility filled every human heart. The galaxy had changed. The Council had been shaken. And humanity, for the first time, truly understood the power of its own determination. They had not conquered with weapons. They had not intimidated with fleets. They had conquered with courage, with knowledge, and with the refusal to accept limits. The horizon of the future was no longer distant. It was within reach. Humanity had opened the first door to the stars, and nothing would ever be the same again. After the first full-scale jumps, the galaxy could no longer ignore humanity. The Galactic Council, which had once been seen as unshakable, was beginning to crumble under the weight of its own fear and indecision. The humans, however, did not act out of arrogance or a desire for domination. They acted with careful thought, always focused on exploration and discovery, and on showing the universe that their species could rise to meet any challenge. Each jump, each new test, and each new achievement spread humanity's influence quietly but steadily across the stars. On Earth, the scientists and engineers of Project Lightfall worked tirelessly. They refined the drives, expanded life support systems, and built new ships capable of traveling farther and faster than ever before. Every test was documented, every calculation verified, and every crew trained for contingencies that no one else had ever faced. They worked not for fame or recognition, but for the opportunity to push the boundaries of knowledge and to secure humanity's future among the stars. For them, every jump was a statement that humans were ready to step into the galaxy as equals. The Council, watching from their massive fleets and high towers of power, was losing control. Their authority, which had been absolute for centuries, was being questioned not through rebellion or force but by human ingenuity. Other civilizations, some oppressed or limited by the Council's laws, began to notice. They saw a species that could travel faster than light safely and efficiently, that could bypass barriers, and that could operate independently of the Council's strict regulations. Whispers of admiration and hope spread among them. Some secretly aligned themselves with humanity, believing that the future belonged to those who embraced courage and innovation. The Council, desperate to regain control, tried intimidation. They sent fleets toward human-controlled space, threatening intervention. But every time, the humans simply jumped beyond the reach of the Council's ships. The faster-than-light drives made human vessels untouchable. No matter how fast the Council moved, no matter how advanced their detection systems, humans could appear anywhere at any time. Their mobility gave them freedom, safety, and an advantage that the Council had never anticipated. The realization was terrifying for those who had believed themselves unchallenged rulers of the galaxy. Humanity's influence began to spread quietly. They shared discoveries, mapped distant systems, and connected with civilizations that had been ignored or oppressed by the Council. They did not force alliances or impose control. They offered knowledge, cooperation, and the promise of a better future through exploration. Slowly, the galaxy began to see a different kind of power, not one built on fear or authority, but on courage, innovation, and mutual respect. Back on Earth, the human scientists understood the significance of what they had done. They were changing the balance of power, not through aggression but through achievement. Every jump, every successful mission, and every new ship added to humanity's credibility. Other species, who had long believed themselves superior, began to question their assumptions. They realized that humans were not reckless or primitive. They were resourceful, persistent, and capable of overcoming challenges that had seemed insurmountable. The Council's internal debates grew more intense. Some members wanted to accept the reality and work with humanity. seeing the potential for collaboration and growth. Others demanded action, convinced that humans were a threat that must be eliminated. But before any decisive action could be taken, humanity made a move that no one had expected. They decided to share the core principles of the faster-than-light drive publicly, broadcasting the knowledge across the galactic network. The Council's monopoly over advanced technology, once absolute, was gone in an instant. This act of openness shocked the galaxy. For centuries, civilizations had guarded their knowledge jealously, using it to maintain control and dominance. Humanity, however, had chosen transparency. They showed that the drive could be used safely, that it was not a weapon, and that the benefits of faster-than-light travel could belong to all who were willing to use it responsibly. This generosity and confidence further distinguished humanity from the Council and won them admiration and loyalty from many civilizations that had long felt marginalized or oppressed. The result was immediate and profound. The Council's authority collapsed in many regions. Systems that had been tightly controlled for centuries now had the means to operate independently. Knowledge, once restricted, was now accessible. Civilizations that had feared punishment for pursuing innovation suddenly had hope. Humanity's influence was no longer based on the threat of force. It was based on the undeniable fact that they had changed what was possible. On Earth, the scientists and engineers continued to push forward. They developed new ships, explored more distant systems, and trained additional crews. Every jump was a test of skill and courage, but also a proof that humanity could operate with precision and safety at a scale the galaxy had never seen. They remained humble, focused on discovery rather than conquest, and always mindful of the responsibility that came with such power. Across the galaxy, humans became symbols of a new way of thinking. They represented hope, courage, and the potential to rise above limitations. They reminded other civilizations that even a small species, underestimated and overlooked, could challenge the established order and succeed. And they showed that true strength was not in domination, but in innovation, collaboration, and the willingness to take risks for the sake of progress. The Council, once confident in their control, now faced an uncertain future. Their fleets, their laws, and their authority could no longer enforce obedience. Other civilizations had gained knowledge and independence, and humanity's actions had inspired a wave of change that could not be reversed. In the quiet corridors of council chambers, leaders debated what to do next. Some argued for cooperation, others for conflict. But one fact was undeniable. Humanity had rewritten the rules of the galaxy, and the old order could not be restored. For humans, the focus remained on exploration. They traveled to uncharted systems, studied new planets, and observed distant stars. They collected data, mapped routes, and made discoveries that no one else could have imagined. Every journey reinforced the idea that humans were not limited by fear, authority, or past failures. They had proven that determination, intelligence, and courage could achieve what others said was impossible. Humanity's rise was not sudden or chaotic. It was measured, deliberate, and responsible. They did not seek to dominate or destroy, but to explore, learn, and share. And in doing so, they changed the perception of what a species could accomplish. They became a beacon, showing the galaxy that even those once considered small or insignificant could achieve greatness through perseverance and ingenuity. As centuries passed, historians and scholars would later look back on this period as the age of human breakthroughs. It was a time when humanity demonstrated that progress did not require permission, and that courage could challenge even the most entrenched powers. The Council, once thought invincible, had been forced to evolve or face irrelevance, and humanity, by showing restraint, wisdom, and generosity, had become a guiding force in the galaxy, not through fear, but through achievement. Even as the galaxy adjusted to this new reality, humans continued their work with humility and focus. They understood that they had a responsibility to the universe, and they approached exploration not as conquerors, but as stewards of knowledge and discovery. Every mission, every jump, and every encounter was a testament to what could be achieved when determination and vision were paired with skill and collaboration. And so, humanity's influence spread. The Council's old control weakened. Civilizations once oppressed or ignored began to thrive. Knowledge flowed more freely. Innovation accelerated. And through it all, humans remained committed to their principles. exploration, discovery, and the responsible use of their extraordinary capabilities. They had shown the galaxy what was possible, and in doing so they had changed the future forever. After decades of preparation, testing, and careful expansion of Project Lightfall, humanity had not only mastered faster-than-light travel, but had also proven that a small species from a single planet could achieve greatness on a galactic scale. The Galactic Council, once a symbol of unshakable authority, had been forced to confront a reality it had never imagined. Humans could operate freely across the stars, without permission and with unprecedented skill. Humanity had shattered old limitations, and the galaxy was beginning to see them not as a primitive species, but as pioneers, explorers, and equals. For the humans who had been part of this journey, there was a profound sense of accomplishment but also responsibility. They understood that the power to traverse light years in moments was more than a technological achievement. It was a shift in the balance of the galaxy. They had the means to explore, connect, and influence civilizations across countless star systems. They had the opportunity to reshape the future, not through fear or domination, but through discovery, cooperation, and innovation. And they intended to do just that. The Starship Horizon, along with a fleet of advanced human vessels, became symbols of this new era. These ships traveled not just to nearby systems, but to the edges of explored space, venturing into regions that no species had dared enter. They observed, mapped, and documented countless worlds. Some were barren, some teeming with life, and some contained civilizations previously unknown. Every journey reinforced humanity's reputation as careful, intelligent explorers. Their approach was deliberate, precise, and focused on understanding the universe rather than exploiting it. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council struggled to adapt. Its long-held authority had been broken, and many of its member species began to question the wisdom of maintaining the old hierarchy. Some species, inspired by humanity, began to push for reform, for openness, and for freedom from the Council's restrictive rules. Others were cautious, still unsure how to respond to a species that had so dramatically shifted the balance of power. Secret meetings were held, strategies debated, and alliances reconsidered. But the truth was undeniable. Humanity had changed the rules, and the galaxy could not return to the way it was before. On Earth, the people behind Project Lightfall continued to innovate. They built larger ships capable of carrying more crews and supplies for longer journeys. They developed new ways to navigate through space, new tools to study planets and stars, and new protocols for interacting with other civilizations. Every success added to their knowledge, their confidence, and their influence. They were not motivated by conquest, but by the desire to explore and understand the universe. And in doing so, they became role models for countless other species who saw in humans an example of courage, ingenuity, and responsibility. Humanity's approach to exploration was careful but bold. They understood that the universe was vast, and that mistakes could have consequences. Yet they were willing to take calculated risks, to push the boundaries of knowledge, and to challenge assumptions. Every new system mapped, every star observed, every new species contacted was a testament to what could be achieved when intelligence, collaboration, and determination were combined. Humans were showing the galaxy that progress did not require domination, only curiosity and courage. The Council tried to respond, but it was too late. Their fleets could no longer control the flow of information, technology, or exploration. Their laws were irrelevant in the face of a species that could travel faster than light at will, and that had the intelligence and skill to operate independently. Attempts to intimidate humans or regain control failed, as humans simply moved beyond reach, demonstrating once again that authority built on fear was meaningless against innovation and determination. In time, the influence of humanity began to reshape the galaxy. Civilizations that had once been restricted, silenced, or oppressed found new opportunities. Knowledge spread more freely. Trade, communication, and collaboration increased across systems. The galaxy became more interconnected, more dynamic, and more open to discovery. Humanity had not only changed the perception of what a species could achieve, but they had also inspired change throughout the galaxy. Humans continued to travel, explore, and learn. They discovered new planets, some suitable for habitation, others with resources and mysteries yet to be understood. They recorded their findings meticulously, sharing knowledge not only with other humans but with other species that showed a willingness to learn and cooperate. Humanity's reputation grew, not through fear or conquest but through their achievements and their example. They became a beacon, a reminder that courage, intelligence, and persistence could achieve the extraordinary. Decades later, historians and scholars would reflect on this period as a turning point in galactic history. The human species, once considered insignificant, had challenged centuries of authority and reshaped the galaxy. They had demonstrated that no matter how small or overlooked a civilization might be, the combination of curiosity, courage, and ingenuity could change the course of history. They had proven that progress could be achieved without domination, and that responsibility and wisdom could accompany great power. Even as the galaxy adapted, humans remained focused on exploration. Their curiosity was insatiable, their desire to understand the universe unending. They traveled farther, observed more deeply, and documented with unprecedented detail. And with every journey, they strengthened the bonds between species, encouraged cooperation, and inspired others to take bold steps toward discovery. Humanity had not just survived in the galaxy, they had thrived, not through aggression but through courage and intelligence. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, had transformed. Some members embraced reform, realizing that collaboration and openness were necessary in a galaxy where humans had set a new standard. Others continued to resist change, but the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. The galaxy was no longer dominated by fear or hierarchy. Humanity had shown that leadership could be based on knowledge, courage, and the willingness to share progress for the benefit of all. The Starship Horizon and its fleet continued to journey across the stars, exploring regions that no species had previously visited. They mapped star systems, studied phenomena that had been mysteries for centuries, and observed new life forms. Each discovery reinforced humanity's role as pioneers and explorers. They had not only proven that faster-than-light travel was possible, but that it could be used responsibly, intelligently, and for the betterment of all, for humanity. The true reward was not power or recognition. It was the knowledge that they had expanded the horizons of their species, secured a place among the stars, and inspired countless others to follow in their path. They had faced skepticism, threats, and doubt, yet they had persevered. They had demonstrated that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome fear and challenge even the most entrenched powers in the galaxy. In the quiet moments, the scientists and engineers reflected on what they had accomplished. They had turned dreams into reality, risk into knowledge, and curiosity into power. The universe was no longer a distant, unreachable expanse. It was a place of possibility, discovery, and connection. Humans had opened the door to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As humanity continued to explore, the legacy of their achievements became clear. They had not only changed the fate of their own species, but they had also transformed the galaxy itself. Civilizations began to embrace exploration and innovation, inspired by the example set by humans. Knowledge spread more freely, and the potential for growth, understanding, and cooperation expanded across systems. Humanity had proven something that no one could ignore. The power to change the universe lies not in fear or force, but in courage, curiosity, and the determination to reach beyond what is known. They had shown that even a small, once overlooked species could achieve greatness, reshape authority, and inspire an entire galaxy to think differently about what was possible. And so, the story of humanity's first faster-than-light journeys became legend. They were not conquerors, but explorers. They did not impose their will, but offered knowledge and inspiration. They had faced doubt, opposition, and immense challenges. Yet they had succeeded through perseverance, ingenuity, and courage. The stars, once distant and untouchable, were now within reach. Humanity had opened the first door to a future where exploration, knowledge, and discovery could flourish, and the galaxy would never forget the species that had dared to reach beyond the limits of the possible.